In a small Alabama town, where Main Street feels like something from a postcard and everyone knows each other's names, the people of Hanceville thought they could count on one thing: their police department. After all, in towns like this, the local cops aren't just authority figures. They're neighbors, coaches, friends, the people you wave to at the grocery store. But what if the officers you trust most aren't just failing to do their jobs? What if they're actively doing harm? That's what happened in Hanceville. It started with a death, one that could have been written off as a tragedy. A young man found dead at work. But this wasn't just any workplace. And it wasn't just any man. It was August 2024 when 28-year-old Christopher Michael Willingham, a dispatcher for the Hanceville Police Department, was found lifeless at his desk. At first, there was confusion. Did he suffer a medical emergency? Was it a heart issue? Stress? The community waited for answers. And when the toxicology report came in, the truth hit like a sledgehammer. Willingham died from an overdose, a fatal mix of drugs that included fentanyl, diazepam, amphetamine, carisoprodol, gabapentin, and methylcarbamol. A mix so toxic, so potent, that it would have killed most people long before they ever made it into the chair he was found in. The first question investigators asked was simple: where did these drugs come from? And the answer was horrifying. Right there, inside the Hanceville Police Department, investigators discovered that the department's evidence room, the place where seized narcotics are supposed to be secured, cataloged, and eventually destroyed, was unsecured. A literal hole had been punched through the wall. A broomstick was being used to prop the door open. Surveillance? Non-existent. Lock systems? Broken. Logbooks? Incomplete. This wasn't a one-off mistake. This was systemic neglect, or worse, a deliberate design. When they looked deeper, the picture became even uglier. The state's forensic team documented serious breaches in chain of custody. Bagged drugs were missing. Evidence seals had been broken. In some cases, they discovered that seized narcotics had been swapped out with crushed pills or baking soda to disguise the theft. The people who were supposed to be locking up drug dealers had become the dealers themselves. The corruption wasn't limited to one or two rogue employees. It went all the way to the top. Police Chief Jason Marlin was charged with tampering with physical evidence and failing to report multiple ethics violations. Officer Cody Allen Kelso and Officer Jason Wilbanks faced charges of computer tampering, evidence tampering, conspiracy to commit a controlled substance crime, and using their official positions for personal gain. Another officer, Drew Shelnut, was charged with tampering with evidence. And it didn't stop there. Kelso's father, Eric Michael Kelso, a reserve officer, and his wife Donna were also charged. Investigators alleged that they were part of a distribution network, funneling drugs from the evidence room into the community. These weren't just criminal charges. They were federal-level allegations suggesting organized activity and long-term cover-ups. It's the kind of scandal that rocks major cities. But this didn't happen in New York or Los Angeles. It happened in a town with fewer than 4,000 people. A town where the badge is supposed to mean something. So, how did it go unchecked for so long? That's a question people are still trying to answer. The grand jury that reviewed the evidence was blunt. They described a rampant culture of corruption, not just isolated incidents. A culture, an environment where dishonesty wasn't the exception. It was the norm. Officers stole drugs, covered for each other, deleted digital records, hid camera footage, and they did it with full knowledge that no one was watching. But now everyone is. When the grand jury handed down their findings, they did something extraordinary. They didn't just recommend arrests. They recommended the entire Hanceville Police Department be abolished, shut down, disbanded, scrapped from top to bottom. And that's exactly what happened. The Cullman County Sheriff's Office immediately assumed responsibility for law enforcement in the area. Uniforms were removed, equipment collected, patrols reassigned. For the first time in decades, Hanceville had no local police of its own. For many residents, it was hard to process. How do you reconcile the idea that the people who gave you speeding tickets, who spoke at your school assemblies, who wore body armor and badges, were stealing narcotics, selling them, and covering their tracks with lies and missing evidence? But the signs were there. Some citizens later came forward and admitted they'd felt uneasy for years, that certain officers had too much money, that rumors of pills moving through town were too specific to ignore, that Willingham's death wasn't just a tragedy, it was the tipping point. Others still couldn't believe it. They had trusted these officers, shared barbecues with them, attended church with them. It wasn't just a legal betrayal, it was personal. As more details emerged, it became clear this wasn't a case of opportunistic crime. This was intentional, calculated abuse of power. Imagine how many cases relied on tainted evidence. How many trials were compromised. How many victims of crime will now never see justice because the very evidence that could have convicted their attackers was tampered with, stolen, or destroyed. One officer reportedly replaced actual narcotics with benign substances so that no one would notice what had gone missing. Another allegedly accessed the computer systems to delete digital records tied to seized drugs. These weren't mistakes. They were cover-ups. And Christopher Willingham? His death wasn't just tragic. It was preventable. If the evidence room had been secure, if oversight had existed, if officers were held accountable when they first crossed the line, he might still be alive. Instead, his overdose exposed the rot that had been growing inside the department for years. His name should never have had to be the catalyst for justice. But in the end, it was. Since the scandal broke, the city council and mayor have promised reform, new oversight, civilian review boards, external audits. But the damage is already done. Trust takes years to build, moments to break, and generations to restore. The officers charged are awaiting trial. More arrests may come. The community is still reeling. And Hanceville now serves as a national example, not a crime, but of what happens when the people sworn to stop it become the ones making it happen. This is Mind of the Missing. If stories like this matter to you, if you believe in accountability, in truth, in justice, then share this video. Subscribe. Comment, because corruption doesn't just happen in the shadows. Sometimes it wears a badge. And when it does, the only way to fix it is to shine a light. Because justice doesn't stop when it gets uncomfortable. It begins there. And no badge should ever be a shield for crime. Not here. Not ever.